This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. We're doing this by virtual meeting. We'll follow the agenda as was published, and we'll try and get through all the items tonight. We ask applicants that they please try and keep their presentations to 10 minutes. We understand that there's some more complicated applications this evening. But brevity is always helpful. We will generally try and deliberate at the end of the meeting. Deliberations are not open to public comment. You can stay on and watch the deliberations, but you're not entitled to speak or present during them. We ask that you keep your microphone muted if you're not presenting or otherwise engaged in an application. We'll give fair time for everyone to speak and be heard on any of the matters that are before us tonight. So don't feel like you're not going to have a chance to say your piece. If you decide not to stay for the deliberations, you can call Woody and he'll let you know how things turned out. And I think that's it. Oh, and if you're presenting, please state your name for the record. If it's a complicated name, if you could help by spelling it, that would be great. Without any further ado, we'll start with calendar number 15-2020, the application of Amy Souchins. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, for 7-Eleven.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Amy Souchins for the record for the applicant 7-Eleven. We have our development team on the call. As with last month, I'm going to take the lead on the initial presentation. And then we'll call in various members of our team as needed, especially in response to your questions. So just by way of background as to where we were last month and what has happened since then, opened the hearing at your meeting on September 16th. And since then, we've also opened the public hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission on the special permit and site plan application on September 22nd. That was a fairly lengthy meeting. I think it was well over 2 hours, and we had discussed both the details of our site plan as well as the regulation amendment that we're proposing as part of the update to the town's motor vehicle service regulations. In addition, and I think it's relevant to some of the issues that had come up at your hearing, and that were outlined in the staff memo from the other day. We had participation from the town's peer reviewer, Mike Galante, who handles the traffic issues, longtime peer reviewer for the town, as well as peer review from the engineering consultant for the town as well. Since that time, we also, in connection with one or two of the comments, also got feedback from the fire marshal and addressed the couple of comments he had just to make sure that the site operations were consistent with the town's apparatus, and those were, in fact, adequate. And then just to walk you through what are the issues in Mr. Woodside's staff report and a couple of the things that you had asked us to look at the end of the last meeting. I think the first one was a question about the configuration of the property and whether there was any opportunity to look at that from a reconfiguration that would allow the islands and canopy to be closer to the post road and thus allow the sign to be closer to the post road. In fact, that was also a question that came up in front of the ARB, and Jim Bernardino is able to answer any technical questions on that, but the short answer is that we're not able to reconfigure the site in any other layout, because what it does is it restricts the movement for the fuel delivery trucks as well as that larger fire apparatus that would be located. It has, as you can imagine, given the turning radius, those limitations. The other thing it does is right now, if you think about the site plan, what I would call the short side of the canopy is what is facing the Boston Post Road right now. Any kind of reconfiguration of the site would try and push the building toward the back and really front load the site with that canopy, which was something when we explained to the ARB, they didn't really seem to prefer. They liked the idea of trying to minimize the impact, and we've also made some architectural improvements to the building at their request, and we'll be discussing it with them next week. So I think that's the major item on the I think it's staff report item number 8, and one of the things that you had asked of us last time.
Amy,
And then, sure.
sorry. So we saw your traffic study. We saw a letter from our peer review. I didn't see a response to that. Was there a response to that?
To the peer review from September? Yes. So that was actually going to be the next thing I was going to address. There's been some back and forth between the various peer reviewers. One of the things that came up at Planning and Zoning was some additional, the Birch Road intersection. Mr. Galante asked, one of the commission members asked, and Mr. Adams, our traffic consultant, was going to review that. And then more importantly, there was, and I submitted this for the record yesterday, we transcribed a portion of the discussion from the P&Z in which one of the commission members asked about whether there should be a limitation on the left turn movement out of the site. Mr. Galante's sort of unequivocal position was that the left out of the site should be maintained. One of the commission members had asked, given the movements and the layout of Boston Post Road, whether it would be safer from a right turn movement. And as you can see from the discussion, Mr. Galante was very clear that his, while he often has been in situations where he would restrict the left turn, here he thought there was appropriate sight lines and it would be the safer condition to maintain that left-hand exit from the site. And I think he was very clear on that subject in response to a direct question. So we've made no changes to the site as a result of that discussion. And we did have, I believe there is still some back and forth on, a couple of other technical items. But for the most part, Mr. Galante's comments about the traffic study were found it to be conservative and consistent with what he would expect. There was, I don't think we've had a written response because there was a little bit of additional follow-up that was being done, sort of true counts and other information, but that's underway.
So the response hasn't been done. We're still under review for the traffic study. Is that what I'm to understand?
No, there was the only thing that had been requested was there was an additional intersection at Birch Road that they had asked to, one of the commission members had asked about having our traffic consultant look at that just to see if there was any improvements or other work that would need to be done. But from a site operation and safety perspective, I don't believe there was anything outstanding.
So there's a list of 6 concerns that Mr. Galante raised in his review letter. I'd just like to see, what the answers to those responses are. In deciding the suitableness of this location for a gas station, one of the things that we're charged to look at is traffic. And without a updated report or answers to our peer review, it's really hard for us to make that determination. I understand that Mr. Galante presented in front of P&Z. I'd like to hear more about why he thinks limiting a left turn is the safer method. I actually, on a completely unrelated matter, had a meeting with a Darien police officer who said that it's one of the least safe intersections in town. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around why an independent party would suggest that. And the traffic review was done, and I don't have answers to the questions raised by it. So I'm struggling a little bit.
So I guess two things. I can certainly have Jason address those items in the peer review letter because he's addressed those in front of planning and zoning. He's on the call. I'm happy to have him address those verbally if they're a concern. And then number two, I do think that this is an issue that has been discussed quite fully at planning and zoning, and I think given your, frankly, slightly more limited jurisdiction over the location, I think you have a slightly narrower purview, and P&Z is looking at this much more comprehensively from an overall site operations and their role. So I do think that the concern that you raise is certainly being looked at quite clearly in the P&Z context. But as I said, I'm happy to have Jason provide you those answers, and if necessary, I can't have Mr. Galante appear in front of you because he is not my consultant. But certainly, if that was something that you felt was important, I think that's a question you can raise with the staff and ask Mr. Galante to either come in front of this board and explain his clear position, or you can, well, I guess that would be it. You'd have to ask the staff to have him present to you.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for so much of a presentation. I was looking for sort of a written response to his 6 points that he raised as areas of concern. And without that, I can't, even if your traffic analyst says one thing, I can't trust that it's necessarily agreed to by Mr. Galante. That's why I think when I talked to you at the last meeting, we discussed having peer review and then answers to those questions so that we wouldn't wind up in a situation where we don't have adequate information.
Right, and I guess the issue is that they have been addressed with Mr. Galante. We have not gotten anything back from him confirming that all of his comments have been addressed, because that's sort of happening in parallel in the P&Z process. So to the extent that, as I said, we can, I'm happy to provide it, but I don't have control over getting the sort of expand, what I would think of as expanding Mr. Galante's scope to include this board. I think that has to be a request, and certainly a reasonable one given your concern, but it has to be a request made of your staff.
Mr. Chairman, if I may jump in here, we can certainly request that of staff at any time at our pleasure. But I would like Ms. Suchins to know, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, that I clearly do not have enough detailed information as of this evening to make any educational vote on this, educated vote on this. I'm very uncomfortable with what information has been dribbled in piecemeal over the last week, including but not limited to significant neighbor opposition, as well as a failure to respond to Mr. Galante's 6 issues, and a number of other things, including signage in the wrong place. And I mean, there's a number of areas that just are completely incomplete, in my opinion, after 18 years, in order to make a decision of this nature. It's 30 years since the town of Darien has done something like this, and I'm taking it seriously. I've been in Darien for 50 years, and I need all the information I can get to make an educated decision. Otherwise, I don't think I'm serving the town correctly.
And I don't disagree with you. And as I said, I think my challenge is that we are responding to Mr. Galante. We've had that back and forth, and I think I probably should turn it over to Jason to talk about where he stands with him. But because I can't say to him, I need you to come present to the ZBA, that's ultimately and I would at this point make that request of the board that you ask Mr. Galante to appear at your next meeting, just like he would at the next P&Z meeting if they have questions. So I'd share your request, and I think with that, I'd turn it over to Jason to explain to you what the back and forth has been with Mr. Galante, because they have certainly corresponded and responded with one another throughout the process.
Sure, I understand that. Woody, can I ask you a question? What's the miscommunication that's happened here? Because I've been asking for this interaction, this communication for a month now.
Well, we did provide you with the Galante report. I thought that was actually what the board was interested in. Certainly, if there's more, whether it's responses to the 6 concerns or to have him actually appear, as Ms. Sushin said, we can certainly arrange that.
Yeah, I mean, what I've been asking for and what we've been tasked with in it's laid out, Amy, in your initial location approval memo. You know, we're supposed to be looking at public travel and safety, and you know, a traffic report seems to be a vital part of that. I mean, I asked for a police department report, fire department report, DOT. You know, all of these things need to be done before I can say, yeah, that's a safe spot. You know, when we looked at the Trader Joe's application, we were actually the board that said right turn only. You can't go out of that site and left turn because it's too dangerous. And you know, I'm hearing the exact opposite on this application, and I guess we either need a report or testimony or both to explain that to me, because they're not that dissimilar a location.
In fact, that was discussed. The chairman of planning and zoning, and that's in the section that I provided, asked about the Trader Joe's site and why that was limited to a left turn, or excuse me, a right turn only. And Mr. Galante, having been the peer reviewer on that site as well, pointed out that it's because there's a secondary access. That part of the transcript is in the document that I provided. But again, if you're only comfortable hearing it from Mr. Galante because you have questions, I certainly understand that and join your request to have him present to you so you can have the same dialogue with him as planning and zoning. I'm in a little bit of a catch-22 because the process is.
Since you interrupted me, let me interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
We had suggested that this application be continued for this evening. Was that request ever made to you?
What was conveyed to me from staff was that it was unlikely you would make a determination. It was unlikely you would vote tonight. It was not in that, but there was a discussion about whether we would need to continue. It was not presented as a request from the commission and the board members that the meeting be continued. It was presented as our option, and that we would expect that we should expect to be continued from tonight.
Well, we can't continue you without your consent. And so we can't require that you continue this hearing, but it is my suggestion, based on the lack of information that I have. I'm not sure, I'm not putting that on the applicant, I'm not putting it on staff, but somewhere there's been a miscommunication on this application. And, you know, I'm not getting the answers that I need to be comfortable enough to make a decision. The most recent of which was the location of the sign. I got an email from staff moments before the hearing, maybe an hour or so before the hearing, that the sign was attempted to be put in a different location. but they couldn't dig in that location, and it's just not helpful.
I will share your frustration on the sign. We had the sign installer go out with a marked up plan. We were notified after the fact that that they hit, when trying to dig for the sign, they, for the footings, they hit utility lines. And so without notifying us while they were doing it, simply adjusted where it should go, and we were notified after the fact. Yes, it was actually yesterday morning that we found out about it.
Okay, so would you consent to a continuance of this hearing until our next scheduled hearing?
Yeah, I would absolutely consent. There are just a couple of other things that I think I would just like to highlight. So if there are any additional questions, and I think so then we can all be clear, because to the extent there was any miscommunication, I understood that what you were looking for at the time when we continued the meeting last month, I thought you were looking for Mr. Galante's peer review comments to date. I was not aware that you were looking for either him to attend or had other specific questions that we would not be able to address verbally tonight. So again, I think part of the challenge that we have is that Mr. Galante was retained as part of the, sort of technically, I think, as part of the P&Z process. And so now that you share those concerns, I certainly think it makes sense to have him here. If there is anything else like that with respect to, in particular, the signage, or any other operational questions that we can address so we can, frankly, avoid this happening next month, I would very much appreciate hearing the board's comments or concerns, so that way we can get you everything that you need with sufficient time to review and raise any other comments for staff before next month's meeting.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd ultimately like is on the location is a traffic report that's agreed to by both sides. I've asked staff to get a comment from the fire department, the police department. I didn't see any of that in the file. If it was obtained, it wasn't submitted. And then I'd like, I've heard a lot of talk about DOT being, okay with things or being favorable of certain things. I'd like to see some sort of written statement or testimony from someone. Generally when we get a report and a peer review, we get a final agreed upon report that the peer reviewer and the applicant's traffic person agreed to. So that's what I was expecting to see in this, and that's as far as location. And I'm taking that off of your memo, which is, I mean, my biggest concern with my sort of scope of review is the width of highway and effective public travel, and that such use of such proposed location will not imperil the safety of the public. I mean, that comes right out of your application.
Understand. And we certainly, again, I think we do have comments that were provided by the fire marshal. We have already responded to those. Those are in the P&Z file, so we can certainly get those to you. We have not received any comments from the police department to date that I'm aware of. And the DOT comments that we received to date were frankly quite technical, and we have responded to those as well. So we can get you copies of all of that information if you'd like.
That would be fantastic. If you could get all of that into the file as well as a final agreed upon traffic study, that would be super helpful on the location issue. I think it probably makes sense, because we need a bunch of information on the location, to move on to the actual variance that's being requested. And so the new submission I've seen on that is that a monument sign that's proposed?
It is correct. And we understand that came in late. We had 2 internal corporate reviews that needed to happen from the Roost portion of the entity and the 7-Eleven. So we actually just got that proposed monument yesterday and tried to get it to you promptly. That is monument sign, details are in that, on that sheet. It's approximately 9 feet high. It would go in the exact location as the proposed pylon. So we would still require the variances for the, because it shares it has the fuel price on it, we would still need the variances for the sign, the fuel price portion of the sign to be located between the canopy and the street. And then we still also need the variance for the size of the sign, both for the fuel price, which remains at 17 square feet, and then for the signage for the Roost and the 7-Eleven, those are, again, the total signage is 46 square feet, so it's very slightly smaller than the proposed pylon. It notes on the plan that it's 48 square feet. That's two of the 48 square feet are the cabinet dimensions. So it's actually 46 square feet of signage. As I said, the fuel price sign is the same size, 17 square feet in both the monument and the pylon. And the 7-Eleven sign remains the same, 23 square feet in both versions. And the Roost sign on the monument is 2 square feet smaller. So the variance request for the signage separate from the fuel actually goes down slightly. The monument sign is allowed to be 20 square feet rather than the pylon allowing 18 square feet. So we are asking for 30 square feet where it would otherwise be allowed 20. So we were able, by switching to the monument style, to reduce the size of the sign slightly, but we wind up in the same place with respect to the need for variances for the location because of the fuel sign.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Woody, go ahead. I'll go after you. Go ahead.
Okay. What I wanted to point out is we'll have to modify the legal notice, continue the hearing, and sort out the specifics. But let me ask a couple things. Does this mean you're dropping the pole sign proposal?
We will drop the pylon. We'll proceed with the monument.
Okay, as far as the location, the pylon sign mock-up, if you will, that's not accurate. What you're saying is you want to put the monument sign in a place where they encountered rock and utilities?
Yeah, underneath.
Is that true?
Yeah, so I know you've been out to the site, the area that's landscaped, when they dug in there because of in order to make sure that sign was secure given the weather on Monday and knowing there was going to be some wind, in order to dig far enough down to make sure that was secure, they hit utility lines. I don't know whether, if you had a smaller mock-up, you'd need the same level of support, but if the board is looking for a mock-up on the location, I can find out about that, and maybe we can have a discussion I can have a discussion with you about how we can accomplish that given that limitation.
Sure. Just so you know, in the past, we've had surface mounted mock-ups. They don't have to be 3 feet in the ground with whatever. But clearly, excuse me, if there's a utility or something that's going to prevent the monument sign from being where you propose it, let's find out now and adjust the location to a spot that's really going to work. Because wherever the board ends up approving this, if they do, you can't go and move it 5 feet later. You know what I mean? So we have to get specific.
We'd also need to find out where I can't say that I know off the top of my head whether those utility lines are shifting at all in the plan. So it may not be a long-term issue. It may be a temporary issue associated with the existing store. But we can, if the board's looking for a mock-up of the monument sign, I'm happy to discuss the logistics of how we get that installed.
I'm not so concerned about a mock-up of the monument sign. I am concerned that it can be, what you're proposing can be built where you want to build it. I think that the photographic sign, the photographic mock-ups, as long as those are to scale, I think are sufficient for the board's purposes to review. I'll let anyone else from the board comment and put in their 2 cents. But in my opinion, I think that the photo mock-up is probably easier to understand. That being said, I would also like to understand what the conforming sign you can put in this location would look like. So if I could get a compare and contrast to what the conforming sign would look like and what the variant sign looks like. As I said from the very beginning, we just amended our sign regulations, and it's really tough for me to grant a variance to regulations that are so recent. So it's got to be compelling.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe I was the one that suggested the monument sign. And as I mentioned before, the information that I'm receiving has been coming piecemeal, dribs and drabs. I don't even have the information on the monument sign. And if I do not know where it is. So I've not even seen something that I was the one that actually suggested to do. That's a little hard to believe.
Yeah, Woody, how was the monument sign plan distributed? Is that by email? I'm looking through my packet. I don't see it either. I know I've seen it.
Yes, it was distributed. Ms. Suchins provided it along with the P&Z Commission hearing quote. It talked about traffic. So there were a couple of things.
Was it in email or was it in the packet? Where was this information sent, please?
To your emails, to your email address.
One of the 40 received on this application?
It's also posted to the ZBA's pending application website.
Yeah.
But it was sent to Mr. Woodside yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. So Amy, if we are going with the monument sign, and that's your new proposal, Woody, if you could just circulate that in our next set of packets so we have it. And the only additional thing I think I'd want to see is again, what a regulation sign would look like as compared to what you're asking for. And then one other question, is there a conforming sign you can put on this property? And what does that look like? So
with respect to location, in the staff memo, there were some proposals. I'm happy to explain why they don't work. But in the short answer is no, because the fuel price sign cannot be located closer to the street than the canopy, and the canopy set back approximately 45 feet. So pretty much, especially as a monument sign, all of the locations that were outlined have constraints. If we're going to proceed with the monument sign, certainly the idea of putting that right adjacent to the front door of the building doesn't work. The other suggestion was behind the building, closer to the office building. If you're looking at the site plan to the right, which is technically to the south, we are making building modifications or site modifications to try and address some of the concerns that our neighbor had raised. I'd prefer, I don't think that sign works as a monument, and frankly, I think would cause a greater impact to our neighbor, and we're trying to lessen those impacts right now. And then the other location that was outlined in the staff report was adjacent to the DOT right-of-way. The constraint that we have there, particularly as a monument, is that it would be blocked by, it would be basically behind the parking spots. So not only would it have no visibility, but we also run into a sensitivity. There's a provision in your regulations that when you abut or you're within 100 feet of the turnpike or the right-of-way, you can't have a sign that's visible from the property. So we don't know whether that would be, certainly with the pylon sign, that was one of the limitations that the staff had told us early on, was to look out for that given how close we were to the right-of-way and the I-95 itself. So I think we've run into the same issue there. So I don't think any of those, just because of the constraint of the site layout, because of the right-of-way and the taking that had gone on in the front of the property, there really isn't a conforming location that would comply with the canopy as the front, basically the front limitation.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let me just clarify something. The monument sign is not a problem in the front setback here. It's the fuel price feature
Correct.
that needs the variance.
Right.
So maybe a fundamental question is the fuel price information really essential forward to the gas island? I mean,
I know that the pricing information is required by state law. We're required to display the price, but certainly, the fuel price sign is highly important to the site. And frankly, the issue is if we tried to divide them, then we have a monument sign with no fuel price, and we'd have to find another location for the fuel price sign. And that brings us back to the discussion we were just having about where that could be. And I don't think there's a location that does not create other issues, either with the adjacent property owner or I-95 or the entrance to the building.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, without the fuel pricing on there and you shrinking the size of the sign, this is a conforming location?
Yes, just as the sign itself. So if it just said 7-Eleven and the Roost, Raise the Roost, the location of the sign as a monument sign is conforming. Once we need to put fuel price on that, that's a requirement of 935. There's a 935D5. You have a separate regulation on fuel price signs, and that is the one that specifically says it shall not be located between the gas island and the street, and it also prohibits locating that sign on the canopy or the building itself. So then we would need to somehow find a location for that sign for the fuel price that's not on the building, not between the gas island, not on the canopy, and as I said, doesn't affect where we can't putting it further back, sort of past the entrance. That's the other constraint of the location closest to the 95 entrance ramp, is you're already past the entrance. If we put it on the other side, we create visibility issues for the entrance and exit. So if you put the monument just before the turn into the site, you have visibility constraints because it's a monument sign. And then if we moved it even further back, that's when we run into the issue with the office building next door.
Okay, and what are the pricing requirements that are required by the state?
I can double check for you. I know they have to be posted. The price has to be posted on the site. So let me double check on the if there are any specific requirements. But I know it has to be posted. I am not familiar with what each, if there are specific criteria.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to understand that, because if you can get signage for the location and what you're selling, and get the names out there, and really and you can do that as of right. Really, the only issue is the pricing. As long as you're not getting stuck with the state telling you that the pricing signage is not accurate or effective enough, you know, I'm not going to pre-decide this, but that seems like a logical way to proceed.
Is to separate out the fuel price sign?
Yeah, I mean, where we've granted sign variances in the past, and the one I can think of most recently was Shake Shack, was, you know, to alert people to the location and to make sure people knew who you were and what you were selling, not necessarily the price of what you're selling. But if there's a state requirement that says, hey, you've got to have it open, obvious, and up by the road, you know, then maybe that's something to consider.
Okay.
Is that, if I may, Amy, is that because the state requires that? Can that be part of a hardship? What is the hardship of having the fuel prices on the sign?
The fuel price.
Yeah, so you're going to have a hardship in order to get a variance.
Oh, right. No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you. In order to get a variance, which you apparently need in order to have the fuel prices on that monument sign, you're going to need a hardship. So what are the hardships?
What we've stated is that the fact that the location of the property and the configuration of the property adjacent to 95 with the constraint of a stream on one side along with the I-95 right of way, and then the property line that was the result of the taking, is truly related to, the unique characteristics of this particular property, and is what we believe the hardship is. It really does limit, where we could place a sign. I think beyond that, there are other considerations that we have tried to take into account with this, particularly with respect to the neighbor not wanting to put the sign on that side of the property. But I do think the actual configuration of the lot adjacent to 95 and with those constraints is the hardship.
It's the hardship. I guess now I'm interrupting. I'm sorry. Please continue.
It's okay. I was done.
Okay, so you think you're stating to the board that the configuration of the property and the neighbor's concern is a hardship to have fuel prices on a sign that that is, as a matter of right, you can have? I mean, I don't understand. I need to understand. I know why the fuel prices have to go on there. So that's my real question. The state is mandating they have to go on there, and I'm sure it's a competitive type nature of things, so people understand exactly what they're paying to get fuel. I get it, but is that a hardship because the state mandates that those prices are on there? Because the configuration of the land and the site is, I don't think it's the minimum adjustment necessary. Putting the fuel prices on there is not the minimum adjustment necessary unless I can understand, and maybe I'm a little slow, but I can understand why the prices are a hardship, or what is that you have to have prices on this sign? That's what I want to know.
Understand.
The sign, I can understand the sign, or a sign, and a configuration of the site and so on and so on. But the prices of fuel, I don't see it. But that's just me.
Okay.
I will work on convincing you.
Okay. I see that there's a lot of people on my screen. Is there anyone from the public who's here? I'm not stopping your time, Amy. I'm not asking you to discontinue. I just want to see if there's public comment, because you're going to be back in front of us. You're going to have more time to talk to us. If people of the public have questions, I'd like you to have the opportunity to address them, and they may not get here for the next meeting.
Correct. I appreciate that.
So is there anyone from the public that wishes to be heard? Okay, I don't see your name. Mr. Oben, please.
Thank you, and thank you to the Board of Appeals to have this public hearing tonight. As I understand it from the narrative item K, there are two issues of variance that are under consideration. The first being whether or not this would be suitable as a gas station. As I understand it, the application calls for 12 gas pump stations. And so I can only interpret that to mean that a good part of the marketing plan here for this location would be to attract traffic off of I-95 to their business. And that concerns me greatly because they also want to operate this on a 24/7 basis, which concerns me specifically with regards to security to the area. And so the gasoline aspect just brings more traffic into the town. I'm looking at this as a citizen and looking at this business as to what value it brings to the town and what does it contribute to the quality of life to the town. And with in my opinion, the potential of all the increased traffic and the transient nature of the people that would be coming into town, I think this poses a higher risk to the town. And I don't see the value or the asset that's being added to the town in that regard. So I am not in favor of this being put into a gas station. The other aspect to this is that they are not just asking for this to be a gas station. They want this to be a convenience store, a takeout restaurant, and a sit-down restaurant. So there are numerous facets to this business that must be taken into consideration, and a lot of it is driven, I think, by the fact that it's going to be selling and pumping gas, and I think that's inherently, as I say, increases risk to the town. The other application aspect that's in here is regard to the signage, which you've already discussed quite a bit. I would just, in the interest of time, say that my understanding was that they wanted to have a sign that was considerably larger than the most recently defined guidelines for signage in the town of Darien. And I know the town spent an awful lot of time and effort to establish those guidelines. So to override them and the effect that has not just to this business, but to all the businesses in town, because they've all complied with the guidelines, I think sets a precedence. And I don't think that's a smart thing to do, given all the effort that's gone into the signage guidelines that exist at this time. The issue of the size of the sign can be significant. It's much larger than guidelines. The location of the sign is also right on the street side. It's not set back. They cited several examples of Sunoco and Mobile. The Sunoco sign is definitely set back farther, and the Mobile sign is a very small sign. It's just on the street side, so it is closer to the curb, but it is a much smaller sign than what they're proposing. And the one aspect of the sign that they are proposing is that, yeah, it's all lit up like a Christmas tree with their gasoline pricing. And I'm not aware of any signage in town presently that is even comparable to what they're proposing. So there too, I am not in favor of this variance. And with that, I thank the board for their time to listen to my feedback. I have sent this in as a letter, which is on record on the Darien Zoning Board of Appeals website. And so if there's any further reading you would wish to do on that, certainly it's available there. And otherwise, I would open it if you have any questions of me. Otherwise, I'll sign off.
No questions, just a couple of comments if you don't mind. I appreciate you coming out tonight to speak. It's always helpful to hear from residents to find out what this sort of court of public opinion feels about applications. But to be clear, the safety issues that we're addressing, and Amy, you can talk about this further, but really the safety issues we're addressing in the location aspect of this really relate to traffic. And so, we're not looking at, inflow from out of town or anything like that. Where those comments are relevant is at the Planning and Zoning Commission, where they do the site plan review. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to tag into one of the planning and zoning meetings to discuss that issue and your other issues. The only other issue that really is before us that you mentioned is the size of the signs. And, you know, Amy knows my position. We've recently amended our sign regulations, and, you know, it's a big job for her to convince this board to vary from regulations that were just recently enacted. So with that, Amy, I'll let you say anything you'd like to say in response to Mr. Oven's comments.
No, I was going to say, I think that was, I saw his letter posted on the website yesterday afternoon. And, you know, my initial comment about the safety was what you just expressed, Mr. Chairman. It's not before you. And then I think the other item is that with respect to whether the signage sets a precedent for others in town, I think that goes exactly to the issue that of a variance and what I need to convince you our hardship is. That is, unlike a site plan or special permit or permitted use in town, a variance is unique to this specific property and holds no precedential effect in the law for other properties. So if somebody else could come in and convince you that they have a hardship with respect to signage or any other issue, whether it's signage or flood control or FEMA requirements or height, it's unique to that particular property. And so I don't think, you know, there's actually a precedential effect in the law or changes the your ability to review any other applications that come before you, whether signage or otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're not a body that's bound by precedent. Each of our applications are unique, and we make our decisions based on the unique nature of each parcel that we grant a variance to. So with that, is there anyone else from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? Mr. Maslin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Robert Maslin, for the record, and I represent Smart Foods of Darien LLC, which is the operator of the mobile station a few hundred feet away. I was just hired this afternoon. I don't have my usual PowerPoint because of the limited amount of time I've had to take a look at this. And since the sign variance aspect of this application is changing, no need for me to go through comments on the original sign application. So I'll take a look at the modification and comment on it next time. The location aspect of this, if the ZBA still has that kind of jurisdiction, it's not the purpose of it is not to trump out the Planning and Zoning Commission. In other words, if you find, based on what things the ZBA is supposed to look at, that this is an appropriate location, it's not binding on the Planning and Zoning Commission, because their view under the special permit process is probably broader, and you don't get home with this just by getting the ZBA to approve the location. There are significant safety issues and traffic and other issues that I'm aware of, and I know that they're still in process. So I'm not going to take up any time trying to fix where that's going to all play out. The only other thing I would mention is earlier there was a discussion about the time limits for closing the public hearing and getting an agreement to an extension. If this is still in effect, the governor's executive order, and there is a multitude of them now, 7I, paragraph or section 19A, extended all of the zoning deadlines automatically by 90 days. So if you start off with 35 days to close a hearing, that's automatically 35 plus 90, which is 125 days. So you really don't need consent. You can extend this out for a sufficient amount of time to give this due consideration. And with that, that's all I have for tonight, and I will comment further at the next of this hearing and at the planning and zoning hearing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maslin. I'd encourage you, if you've got any comments on the location approval and our purview in that, if you want to submit them to staff for our review, that would be helpful.
I will.
If you and Mrs. Souchins, I'm not sure.
Amy's fine.
Amy's
Bob
fine.
right away.
Amy's a popular name lately.
Amy, if you don't mind, participating with, I'm assuming your client is not in favor of this application, Bob?
Correct.
Okay, so if you guys could coordinate your efforts and either come to some agreements or not, but if you could submit things to us, at least a week in advance of the hearing, that would be helpful for us to digest them and ask for any feedback, so we don't end up in this situation. And Bob, whether the governor's order is in effect or not, I believe that, Amy, you're consenting to a continuance. Is that correct?
Yes, and I will concur with Bob that the executive orders do allow extensions. My experience, and I think the drafting intent was to make those at either party's discretion. So if you wanted the additional time, you could ask for it and basically get it, whereas previously I had to consent. But there certainly is extensions of time under that order. The order technically expires the first week of November, but we'll see what happens. It's been extended once.
Okay. All right. Well, we all find ourselves in unprecedented times. So I appreciate your consent. And with that, and is there anyone else from the public that wishes to be heard tonight on this application? Okay. Seeing no one, we're going to go and continue this till, Woody, can you tell us the date of the next meeting?
That's November 18. November 18. Sorry, was that clear? November 18th?
Yep, good. Okay, we are continued till November 18th. Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, off to a good start. That was about 10 minutes, wasn't it, Jeff? We're on to our regularly scheduled public hearings, calendar number 19, 2020, the application of Robert F. Maslin Jr. on behalf of Gnosis Real Estate. Hopefully I got that right. 171 Post Road. Mr. Maslin.
Let me see if I can screw this up. I want to make sure. Here we go. I want to make sure you got the right. You should see one slide on your screen. It's our introductory sign on a PowerPoint presentation. And for the record, I'm Robert Maslin. I represent Gnosis, which is the applicant, and also participating are Mr. Anastaglu, who's the principal of the property owner. And also, you may see on your, now I can't pull this up because I have the PowerPoint, but there's a screen with the name Biagio on it, and that is Biagio Riccio, who is principal of a potential tenant for this space. And he surfaced while this application was pending, and his proposed use of this space is exactly the way a diner would be run: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, except they would serve organic plant food instead of, I hate to say this, Tom, diner food. But other than that, the operation would be the same. we are asking for a couple of things. But first, I'll give you kind of an overview of this site. I put up an aerial view, and you can see it's right off exit 13 here at the corner of Richmond Drive and the Post Road. This has been here for quite a few years. The old Driftwood Diner was taken out, and this new diner was put in place pursuant to variances and a special permit and site plan review. Variances included a variance for parking, a variance for the size of the dining area, and I think one or two other things. Because of the nature of the site and because it previously was a site of a diner and the use itself was being restored, the variances were granted. This is an aerial photograph. If you were above the two ramps right there at exit 13, looking down at the site in a northeast direction, this is what you would see. And then the third, and these pictures are from the application. This is another Google Earth view. It's from the intersection itself, looking toward the diner, again to the northeast.
I don't think there's anyone in town that's unfamiliar with this location.
Okay. Our requests are an approval of about a 150 plus or minus square foot food prep area in the otherwise unfinished basement. And this is to provide more space for kitchen help without increasing the number of kitchen employees. And this is particularly important given the distancing preferences and requirements in some situations under COVID, and it's probably not a bad idea going forward for public health purposes. The next request is approval of about a 400 plus or minus square foot office area in the attic level. The rationale for this is the original approvals were based on a parking variance, and the owner's ability to use an office in another location. The current request will allow a diner owner, or in this case, a different type of restaurant, to have an office in the same building as the diner. In addition, as I'll go through in a few slides, there is no longer a parking shortage as a result of a change in the parking requirements. And then third, approval of liquor service in the diner. The reason this is here is because when this diner was built, the applicant did not request liquor service. The question was raised, are you planning liquor? And the answer was no. So they never requested it. The variances in the site plan approval all specified that liquor is not specifically approved. However, it was never requested and denied. This is just the way the application went in. And back when this building was built, liquor in diners was a fairly new concept, and obviously there were some concerns. Now, I think liquor in diners has really been the norm, and it's also been the norm in small restaurants, and you're just not seeing the kinds of situations where people are hanging around all night in the parking lot and being obnoxious. So I mean, the whole situation with dining out and going out and socializing is just different from 20 years ago. This is the excerpts from the plans of the most recently approved diner operation. This is sheet A1, shows you the driveway to the Post Road and the exit to Richmond Drive. Building is tucked away here along the northeastern boundary. There is a clear area, well, not clear, but landscaped area to the northwest here. Residential property all the way to the northwest. Richmond Drive, and then you have commercial properties to the northeast. The existing floor plan looks like this. We have Post Road entrance down at the bottom of the sheet. You go in, restrooms down a little hallway here, cash register and counter is here. Steps to the attic along here, and steps down to the basement as well. This blank area is the kitchen. And then the whole.
Bob, if I can interrupt, where's your cursor? I hear everything you're saying, but where's your cursor? There you go.
All right,
I
wait.
got it now.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at two screens here, and I got the cursor. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, Post Road entrance is down here. You have a little hallway in here for the restrooms, counter and cash register here, stairway up and down, and kitchen is this blank area here with a doorway to the rear, dumpster enclosure in the back, and then the dining area is here with an extra door over to the left. These stairs down in the back are to the basement. They go into the ground to the basement. The basement's unfinished. There's a restroom down there. What we'd like is approval to basically have some food preparation here. There's a couple of sinks and a prep table, but this is it. It's not finished space in the sense that it's going to be decked out with finished walls and all the rest of that stuff. It's not open to the public. In fact, there's no way for the public to get down there unless they go through the basement stairway behind the building, which I don't think anybody's going to do. The doorway to those stairs is over here. And then the stairs coming from upstairs down to this location here, the top of the stairs is off the back of the kitchen. So there's really no easy way for somebody from the public to get down here. This is just going to be one guy, maybe two guys, who would otherwise be working in the kitchen. So we're not adding employees to this. The other space that we're asking for is a little office upstairs. And we've had this drawn out schematically. This is a 16 by 18 foot rectangle with a hallway and a landing at the top of the stairs. And I had them calculate square footages for these, and they add up to 400, which when you go from the previous requirement of 2,800 square feet was based on a 1,400 square foot first floor, which is the only space that counted for the parking requirement. And now that we have 28 spaces, we can go to, I'm sorry, 18 spaces rather. It's one space per 100, so we can accommodate 400 more square feet of finished space, and that's what's up here. On the parking, Woody had a question about how we calculated parking. The existing parking was built with a variance, and this is how it worked out. The ground floor area is 1,400 square feet. The spaces back at that time were 1,400 divided by 50, and that led to a 28 space requirement. And so we assumed that the 1,400 square feet was the square footage of the first floor that was considered in the site plan and variance applications. Now the requirement is one space for each 100 square feet. So now the requirement is only 14 spaces. We have 18, and the extra 4 spaces will support the additional 400 square feet of finished space upstairs. But we're asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to treat the basement space the way they treated employee space in the basement of the melting pot. There's a little bit of a explanation to that, but the short answer is that you're familiar with the melting pot on Grove Street where the fountain is. That building was approved as a 3-story building. The 3rd floor was allowed because the fountain and the public plaza area was provided. And the basement originally was proposed and approved as dead storage. The melting pot came along as a tenant and requested that some of the space in the basement be used for things like employee lockers, employee restrooms, not open to the public, and that sort of thing. And we're looking for something just very similar to that. It's not really polished up space. It's, the food prep area is just basically counters set up and sinks set up in space that's otherwise just not finished.
Bob, have you talked to the health department about this?
Yes, Tom has talked to the health department. They're okay with it. They would have to sign off on it formally, but we want to get through the variance and site plan revision.
And just so I understand, Bob, the reason you're in front of us is because your use was allowed pursuant to a previous variance, and then you're changing that use, and that's why you need a new variance?
We're amending the site plan that was allowed under the previous variance, yes.
Okay, and does this go back to planning and zoning then for site plan approval?
Yes, we have an application pending, and our hearing on that, I believe, is next Tuesday.
Okay, so, okay, I'll let you finish with liquor, but I don't know that there's a whole heck of a lot more that we need to know about this application. We're just basically amending the use under a current variance. And that's to allow a kitchen. You're going to make the parking conforming now?
It happens to be conforming because of the reduction in the requirement. So
Right.
that variance is pretty much obsolete. We don't need a parking variance.
Right. So you're reducing the nonconformity on the site. You're going to put in conforming parking. You're going to put in an office that conforms. I guess the only other question would be the story issue, whether it's 2.5 or 2
Right.
story.
And-
So maybe if you address that, that would be, that's probably the only other helpful piece of information, unless the board wants to hear more. But I kind of get the gist of this.
Okay. Let me just go back. Okay. This food prep area is in the basement. Right now, the approvals, both at ZBA and planning and zoning, all had storage in the basement, which basically meant refrigerators, dry storage, and that sort of thing. And that's been there. The food prep area is something that would be included down there, but it doesn't add to any of the intensity of use or number of customers that would fit in the place because it's not open to the public. And what we did here was looked at it and I thought, well, instead of asking for a half a story variance, I thought, well, a better way to look at this would be to compare this with the melting pot. And in the melting pot situation, they already maxed out on their floors. They had 3 floors already, and that's the maximum they were allowed under the zoning regs in the central business district. But the Planning and Zoning Commission approved similar space where it's just employees. It's not really finished space. It's active as far as employees go. And I actually have a plan that I think I can show you that actually shows exactly what they approved. But we want to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for that. Let me just see. No.
If they approve
That's
that,
basically it. And if the Planning and Zoning Commission approves it, then it's no longer an issue.
then you don't need a variance.
I wouldn't need a variance for it.
So why are you asking for one?
Well, because the ZBA in their decisions said the basement is storage only and not any active space. So we're just asking to modify the existing variances by allowing this 150 square foot area in the basement so that the basement now has a food prep area as part of the unfinished storage area.
So,
And
so
as far as office upstairs concerned, I mean, that was supposed to be storage also under the previous variances.
Yeah.
And we're asking to modify that to allow that space. We have enough parking now to satisfy the requirements. And basically that's it. And the liquor, you know, we're asking for the liquor only because the previous ZBA decisions made note of the fact that liquor was not requested and it wasn't being approved. So that the town, I guess, the zoning officer would not be able to sign off on a liquor permit application because liquor was not approved for this site. So that's really it.
And
Right.
if we approve
Go ahead,
liquor-
Mike.
Sorry, Jeff. If we approve liquor for this site, you've still got to go through the whole process of applying for a liquor permit, putting up signage, all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, Jeff, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thanks, Mike. I'm sorry too. First of all, yeah, the situation that Bob is referring to relative to storage downstairs and upstairs was relative to the parking situation. They were shy parking. We made them move the buffer and so forth and so on. So they increased the parking there a little bit. But now, of course, that's changed. So now the parking requirement is half. So there's been a change of situation there with regard to parking. With regard to liquor, he's also correct. That was never requested. But my question, Bob, is this. Number one, I happen to know what the use is, but is the board aware of exactly what the use is going forward? Because you keep using the word diner. It's not a diner. So explain that, number one. Number two, what are the hours that you're asking for liquor to be served? And well, I guess that would mean the hours of the business itself. So.
Okay. All right. We started this application when it was still diner space.
Right.
And the owner was asking to make these adjustments so that it would be more suitable for another diner operator to come in and open a diner.
But it's really a diner though, is it?
What's that?
It's not really a diner.
Well, it's always been called Driftwood Diner, but that's because it goes back to the old days when the Driftwood Diner was a little railroad cars type building.
Right. Well,
like the old-fashioned diners.
I know, we all remember that, but the use is organic. I mean, you're not going to get a bacon, egg, and cheese and pancakes at this place, is my understanding. It's strictly organic. Am I incorrect on that?
That's my understanding is, but it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sit down like the diner was, and they serve organic, plant-based food on the same schedule as the diner. And
Understood. I just think organic plant-based food is a little bit different than a diner. Diners sort of connotate, traffic and a lot of people and late nights, the kids late night and that sort of thing. So what are the hours?
The approved hours already in place are 6 a.m. to 11 Monday to Thursday and 6 a.m. to midnight on Friday and Saturday.
And is that what you're requesting?
Well, it's the same. We're not asking to change that.
Okay, fine. Thank
And
you.
if planning and zoning has any issues with that, I think it would be better for them to explore that with us if they would like.
Understood.
Capacity is the same, 47. Everything's pretty much the same. Let me just see if I can figure out where I left off. Right. So I went through these. Liquor. You know the story on the liquor. Staff memo. We've given you accurate square footage. There is a buffer between the building and the residential property to the northwest. I would suggest if there are any issues with that, when we go to planning and zoning, we'll address that. The fire marshal and health department have to sign off on both uses, actually, basement and attic. And number 4, we're asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to treat this the way they treated the melting pot, with basically no increase in intensity of use. And
Bob,
I'm not aware of any reason to prohibit liquor sales in this day and age. 20 years ago, liquor was dealt with a lot differently, And now people don't go out and find a place that sells liquor and drink themselves into oblivion the way they used to do. It's a whole different thing now. And now, with this as a sit-down type eating establishment, it's not a bar. And it's
Bob,
not
did
going
you-
to happen.
Yeah, Bob, you mentioned that the 400 additional square feet factors into the parking. Why doesn't the 150 additional square feet in the lower level add into the parking allowance?
Because we're asking the Planning and Zoning Commission really to treat it as if it's part of the dead storage space without treating it as a story or basically finished space.
Barb, if I may chime in here, like I always do. One of the issues with regard to that downstairs prep area is those prep chefs and chefs, what have you, are already on site. They're already on site. They're not increasing the intensity. If I understood Mr. Maslin,
Yes, that's correct.
they're not increasing the intensity of the site. The prep chefs are already there. They just want to put them downstairs.
Correct.
But isn't that the same argument for the office space? The office is for the managers of the deli, the diner.
No.
Sorry.
I can
I'll let
give,
Mr. Maslin address that.
I'll address that. This is what happened back in 15, 20 years ago. And I'll tell you a real quick story. I took my 5 or 6 year old daughter there for pancakes one day. We sat at the counter. She loved it. 2 weeks later, my daughter takes my wife to the Driftwood Diner, and they're driving back and forth, and they can't find it. Why? It's a hole in the ground. They demolished it. That's how long the Driftwood Diner's been there. And when they rebuilt, their applications required parking variances under the old regulation of 1 per 50 square feet. To minimize the amount of the variance they needed for parking, they minimized the finished floor area inside the building. And at the same time, it happened that the owner of the building had another business that he would operate his office in. So it was convenient not to have an office. But today, now that we have a sufficient number of parking spaces and a potential tenant, or any tenant for that matter, that doesn't have an off-site office nearby, the office becomes a more important, significant thing to have in the space. And that's why we're asking for approval of the additional 400 square feet.
Okay.
Is that answer your question?
I think we got it. I'm just going to ask if there's anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this application. I am not seeing anyone. Mr. Maslin, I think I get the application. I don't know if there's any members of the board who have anything further to ask. Woody, do you have anything to ask?
No, but I am slightly curious, if you don't mind. Bob, real quickly, why is the P&Z Commission looking at this? What's different that they have to approve?
Well, this is a special permit and a site plan approval, and we're asking to modify it. We're modifying the interior of the building, which is a modification of a restaurant space by adding these 2 spaces, or reconfiguring, adding the attic space and, putting food prep down in the basement. So technically, and the existing planning and zoning approvals, like the ZBA approvals, say liquor has not been requested and is not approved. So we need them to approve liquor.
It sounds like the same things that are on the
That's
ZBA.
exactly what's going on here. Yep.
Um, okay. So you don't really, are you asking for a 2.5 story variance?
No, It's not in the legal notice from what I can tell.
It says, and if necessary, variance is 756.8, 2.5 in lieu of 2 stories max. I mean, we're not,
Woody might have put it in there. Let me see.
we're not inclined to grant that as a maybe. You might need it. So, you know, if we were to approve this, we would probably approve it without that variance. And if planning and zoning shot you down, you could always come back to us. But you know, height in story variances, we as a general rule try not to grant.
Oh, I know that. That's why I tried to get this in. That's why it says, oh yeah, Woody did put it in the legal notice. So if necessary,
Necessary.
I mean,
That's a way to grant the variance.
grant that limited to this particular use. I mean,
Yeah,
it's covered in the legal notice.
Yeah, it's a strange variance for us to grant. You know, we've wrestled with this recently. We were recently asked to grant a temporary variance, and as you know, Bob, variances are permanent and run with the land, and you know, are related to a permanent hardship that is unique in nature to that property. And to grant something that's possibly necessary, possibly not, doesn't really make a lot of sense from where I sit.
Maybe not in this particular setting, I guess, in this context. No, I understand.
All right.
You know, and this whole strip, I don't think there's another building that's more than 2 stories.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will be deliberating on this later. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, there's everyone back. Okay. We are on to calendar number 2020. Stephen K. Jones on behalf of Scott and Lynn Somerville for their property at 21 Miles Road. If you're here on that application, please step forward.
Hi, can you hear me? It's Stephen Jones speaking.
You are all set, yes.
Yep, we're good to go. So I'm representing the Somervilles and the 21 Miles Road variance request. And, you know, I can give you a quick overview and then take questions. I think the materials are fairly self-explanatory. I'm being asked to close some windows here. I'm not sure what that is. We're new to GoToMeeting here. Not sure why we're being asked to do this.
Fred, I think
Steve, this is Fred.
If you can hear me, I'll just continue.
If you want to share your screen, you may do so. If not, it's not necessary.
We're not sharing a screen, you're just talking.
Yeah, we're not sharing any screen, so I'm just talking. And if that works, I'm just going to go ahead here.
that works. Please.
Mr. Netter, are we good to go?
Yes, please.
Yes. So we're looking at a 1948 2-story home on a 5th acre lot that's in a 1/3 acre zone. It's a small home on a small lot in a big zone. And, you know, Lynn and Scott Somerville are looking to expand this property and to remodel their home. Right now they share 1 bathroom on the 2nd floor. There's 4 family members and a dog. So what we're proposing to do is add 2nd floor and attic floor living space over the existing 1st floor. So we want to go straight up, and with the exception of a small awning over the front door, we're not changing the footprint. We went forward with this project under the assumption that it was conforming to the regulations, and we had a new A2 survey that said it was conforming. And there was a small asterisk, and it turns out that that small asterisk was referring to a 1982 ZBA variance that granted a 9.7 foot minimum side yard setback. And partly because of the COVID thing, we never got to see that that variance or understand what that asterisk was in reference to. So we proceeded with the assumption that the house was totally conforming, and we developed plans to go up from the first floor. In August, when we submitted the permit application, the zoning department looked into it and uncovered the 1982 ZBA variance and noted a discrepancy and said, based on that, we would have to either get a variance or shave 6 inches off the side of the house. Now the house, we ended up doing new A2 surveys, which measured the distance from the house to the side yard. And it came out that the house is 1.8 inches over the setback. And that's really just the cladding and the trim on the house that extends over the setback. The house is slightly skewed on the property.
You're asking for an inch variance?
1.8 inch variance.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we were told that, the option was to get the variance or to take 6 inches off the house.
Oh my God.
And it's
Okay.
already.
All right. I think I've got a good handle. Mr. Jones, I think I have a good handle on this application. It seems pretty straightforward to most of my board members. It's very straightforward to me. So I don't think that there's any real explaining that we need. It seems like the minimum adjustment necessary or hardship is based on the undersized lot in the zone. I really, unless there's some public comment that's dramatic, I really don't see any issues with the application. And so with that, if you don't mind, I'll ask if there is any public comment. Okay, seeing none. Mr. Jones, you have anything further you want to present?
No, I just wanted to make sure that you did have the letter of support from the neighbor. So that has been addressed, and there were other requirements too, like removing the rear deck and the shed off the property, which the Somervilles have completed.
Okay, perfect.
So we've done everything that zoning asked us to do.
That's great. Any members of the board wish to be heard? Dan, okay. Woody, anything? No? Okay. Good. Thank you very much for your time this evening, and I appreciate you coming out to present.
All right, thank you.
We'll go ahead and close that hearing. We're on to calendar number 22 of 2020. The application of Sean Walters and Wagner Pools on behalf of Jeffrey Behringer at 36 Beach Drive. Oh, Beach Drive, what a fun spot. We haven't had any problem with development on Beach Drive. If you're here on that application, please step forward.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sean Walters. Good evening, ZBA. Thank you for your time. There I am. If you don't mind, I'd like to share my screen with you, and I'll just walk you through this real quickly. We're actually requesting a number of variances, but they're fairly straightforward due to some pretty unique site constraints. Open screen. How do I share my screen?
Sean, this is Fred. I did pass the control over to you. You should see a pop-up on your screen. Let me go ahead and try again if you don't see it.
Yep, nothing yet. Nope, no pop-up. Let me just
While
try.
we're waiting for that, Sean, can you, we've had some issues with Beach Drive and development down there in the past due to the narrow nature of the road and the constraints in building in that area in general. And I wasn't being insensitive when I made that comment earlier, but we have had some real issues down there. And I think the first thing I'd like to hear is how you're going to deal with a development of this size on a very small lot on a very narrow road? And what controls and management are you going to put in place so that our staff isn't spending inordinate amounts of time down there policing vehicles and the like?
Sure, completely understood. So, of course, aside from the usual control measures like a siltation fence, a double fence that's going to protect Holly Pond to the west, it's a relatively, although there are several variances requested, what we're looking at is a 7 square foot spa in ground, a raised 7 square foot fire pit, a privacy fence, and some stepping stones on stone dust. All the work's going to be done with a mini excavator. The excavator is actually 5 feet wide from the outside of one track to the outside of the other. So very minimal amount. There's going to be no large equipment whatsoever. And the access is going to be straight off the driveway. To the left of the driveway as you're viewing it in plan. And we're not going to be stockpiling anything either. Everything's coming off the site because it's relatively flat. There is no grading proposed.
Okay, so there's going to be no stockpiling. Tell me where the workers are going to park, because that's really what we've encountered issues with in the past. So you're going to have about how many men per day on this job?
Michael, it's going to be about 3 men per day throughout the duration of the project, a machine operator and 2 guys on the ground.
Okay. And those 3 people will arrive in separate vehicles, in the same vehicle? Will they park on site? Will they park off site and get there from off site?
They're all going to come down in one vehicle. Our Wagner is just up the road from, you know where we're located, 101 Norotan Avenue. So we use our own parking lot at the office where I am now as a staging point for service crews and other job sites that we have nearby.
Okay. And if we
ones, down near the water, Contentment Island, we have a few of them right now, and
okay.
they're all a little tricky. Your concerns are certainly noted and well informed.
Yeah. So if we were to make a assuming we got to an approval, if we were to make a stipulation that there be no more than, say, 2 work vehicles on site at any time, and that you would utilize the client's driveway for parking of those vehicles, would that be doable? Could you manage that?
Absolutely.
I think that would make your life and the neighbors' lives. I think they've been through enough down there. So let's try and get this one right.
I think you're correct, and I noticed there's some nearby construction also. So it's a fairly active area for such a small, as you noted, a very narrow road. I drive a Volkswagen Golf, and personally was concerned about parking on the road with enough space for somebody to pass me, just while I was going down to visit the site and conduct some analysis. So I understand what you're saying. We would be completely agreeable to that. Yes.
Okay. So did we figure out our technical issues, Fred?
This is telling me that I had to reset my permissions, and now it's telling me that I need to restart.
So let's not do that.
Meeting.
Yeah, why don't you've got your materials in front of you. We've got them as well. Did you see the staff questions that were asked?
Give me just a second here. The staff questions I don't have in front of me, only the agenda for the meeting.
Okay, so let's go through your proposal, walk us through it, and then I'll ask you the staff questions, and then we can figure out where we are.
Okay. Are you okay if I do a restart on GoToMeeting?
Fred, how long is that going to take?
This is very strange. This has never happened before.
Is it just the program you're restarting, or your whole computer?
It says restart GoToMeeting because I had a firewall on my computer that wasn't letting me share the screen.
Okay.
Once I changed permissions, it's telling me that I have to restart in order to allow the screen sharing.
Okay, Sean, why don't you go ahead and do that? I think it'd be easier to walk
Okay,
through.
please stand by.
Jeopardy music here.
I have an administrative question, though, especially as it relates to Beach Drive and the issues we've had down there. Is it possible to have a stipulation where the Behringers can't start their project until the Sesky project is finished? Is that possible? I mean, do we have to have two projects, whether major or minor, going on that type of street at the same time? Are we allowed to have that type of stipulation? Because that's what I would. That's the type of road where I'd say, you know, hey, one project at a time, guys.
Well, I think Jeff, if we confine them to their own property, their own driveway, there's no vehicles parking on the road, which Sean has agreed to. I don't see how their project's any more impactful than, you know, the lawn guy showing up.
Well, true that, but
You know?
okay, if Sean has the controls in place to keep those cars on the property, okay.
Yeah.
Oops,
Okay.
something happened there.
You've got your screen, very pretty island.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. I apologize for the delay.
No
So you
problem.
guys can see this. This is the existing survey.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So as you know, we've got Holly Pond to the west of the house. To the east, we've got Beach Drive. And of course, from the center line of Beach Drive, we have a 65-foot front yard setback, which is actually located in the rear yard. And from Holly Pond, a 100-foot coastal area management review line in the front yard. And then not too far across the street, we also have Long Island Sound. So what we have here is an overlapping sort of gray area with overlapping variances that make it impossible, or overlapping zoning constraints that make it impossible to build anything without a variance. As you can see, we have a very a small sliver or area to work with. And it should also be noted that from Beach Drive, as you are looking towards Holly Pond, the property is raised. This is a retaining wall here, and it's pretty heavily planted with miscanthus and some other shrubs. So the lot is raised relative to Beach Drive, and then Holly Pond is actually at a lower elevation than the lot also. So if you're standing on Beach Drive and looking towards Holly Pond, you see very little of it. And I just wanted to note that. Also, there's an additional parking area here, this asphalt drive, where we can have, you know, if we have our crew show up in one car, that they can come and utilize this without disrupting the owner's driveway, which is here. So I just wanted to point that out. So here we have the proposed side plan. And basically oriented the same way as the survey. You have your 7-square-foot spas right here, and it's located in the alcove behind the existing garage and next to the existing sunroom. So if you connect the dots between the corners of these two areas of the house, the spa does not go outside of that envelope. And then immediately to the left of the spa, we have a raised fire pit. These are all stepping stones with turf joints. Everything, you have a privacy fence here coming perpendicular off the house. A raised equipment pad at elevation 14. The proposed moved AC units also raised to elevation 14. We have some evergreen screening in front of that and in front of the fence. And again, this is only 4 sections, 4 8-foot sections of fence. They're going to be very hard to see from the road anyway. You know, during the peak season anyway, when people are using the lake and what have you, because of the raised elevation of the lot. So that's it. You're looking at the entire work area here. And the reason why we're requesting these variances, this trellis structure, one of the variances is actually going to be on the back of the garage. That's right here, right? And the spa would be tucked into the alcove here in the foreground. So the trellis is just to kind of soften up this area. You have 2 sheer walls around you, and you're, you know, sitting in the spa trying to enjoy sort of a private moment, you know, in your own garden. And this just softens it up. You're not looking at just the back of a garage. The trellis will be planted with some sort of flowering, you know, hydrangea or what have you. And then also, Woody, you and I had a conversation about this. There used to be a half pipe in here. That's been removed since then. I know that there was some question as to whether or not that was actually a movable structure. I didn't have any discussions with the owner about this. This picture was taken on Monday, the 12th, this previous Monday. It's now a trampoline, but the half pipe is gone. And you're also looking at here in the foreground, this is the area where you can actually just make out the 2 condenser fans that are going to be moved closer to the standpoint of the person taking this picture, closer to this trash bin. And then beyond that, coming off this corner of the house will be the privacy fence and the equipment pad in the foreground. And then, of course, we have, everything is shown on a proposed survey by William Seymour as well. And here, the skateboard half pipe, previously located here, again, has been removed. We do have a letter of support from the neighbor at 42 Beach Drive. This is horrible, this green text. It just printed that way from the email. But this was sent to the town. I know you guys have a copy of it. And I know there were some concerns about the neighbor immediately. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the regular meeting screen here. There were some concerns about the neighbor immediately to the south. And my understanding, based on a conversation with Mr. Berenger, is that he also had a conversation with this gentleman who's been quite active in the past, voicing concern about projects in the area, and he expressed no issue or problem with it. I think, in fact, he might be more focused on something going on directly south of him at the moment.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can jump in there. We do have a relatively brief letter from the immediate neighbors supporting this proposal. And I think we got that today.
Is that, Woody, am I reading, is this right? 42 Beach Drive?
42 Beach Drive is the Sexays, I believe. The Bellick and Sullivan are closer. Bellick and Sullivan are the immediate neighbors. And that's the one I mentioned that wrote a letter of support.
And the property to the south, okay, it doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think I understand this. I'm just going to go around the horn. If anyone has any questions. Oh, actually, sorry. I just had a couple of staff questions that I want to ask you. Small buildable area. Yeah, I think that's okay. I'm okay with it. The AC units and other equipment are going to be in the front. Is there any plan to screen those? I think most people usually put some sort of screening around the AC units. Is there a planting plan to screen those? Sean?
I think we should, and the AC units aren't screened presently on the plan. I think that's a good point. In fact, I didn't know if it was asking too much to bring that, the privacy fence that we're proposing, to bring that in front and then screen the front of that as well, because it also kind of functions as some soundproofing. But I don't know if that's as important as at least just screening the.
Yeah, I would just screen the units. And then the next question was, you've got a proposed 6-foot privacy fence, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I guess code is a 4-foot privacy fence. Tell me why you need the 6 feet.
The 6 feet simply because, we do have a spa here. Despite the privacy fence, I think is as much for the neighbors as it is for the homeowner. You're going to be enjoying your spa and your swim trunks or whatever, and it just 4-foot fence, you're seeing somebody, it doesn't really screen much. You're going to see people's heads up over the top of it. We wanted some total privacy, but at the same time, it's a shadow box fence, which allows light and air through. It's one of those fences when you drive by, you can actually see what's on the other side for a brief second as you drive by each rail, and then all of a sudden it disappears. So there is some light and air coming through. It's going to be planted anyway, and those plants, the skip laurels, are going to grow higher than 6 feet. I mean, they'll get up 7 or 8 feet. So, the idea is that you won't see it, but the fences, I think, as much to offer privacy for the neighbors as it is for the owner, Mr. Behringer. And then, down the line in about 5 years, everything's going to be, it's just going to see plants, flowering vines, climbing hydrangeas. There's a redbud tree in the corner on the inside. So, we want it to look more like a garden than anything.
Okay. Anyone from the board have any questions? Go ahead, Vic.
Hi, could you talk a little bit about how you're going to light this area, or did you already do that? I can't remember.
Sure, I certainly can. There is on the landscape drawing, you guys can't see my screen anymore, can you?
No.
Okay.
I did see the spotlights kind of thing.
Yeah, so there's an uplight on the ornamental tree. In this whole installation, there's one uplight, and that's located in the alcove of the privacy fence. So you're not gonna see this light from the neighbors. Just the underside of the leaves of this tree are gonna be illuminated a little bit. And then I'm showing 2 separate path lights, and the path light just being that mushroom shaped, here we go. So this uplight here is on this redbud tree. And the redbud tree is nestled in the corner of this privacy fence. And then behind the tree are hydrangeas. So the light's going to be pretty much contained to this area. And excuse me, there are 4 downlights around the raised fire pit. That would be these over here. Those just slip underneath the cap. The cap on top of the stonework, and the illumination is down. It's not up or out. These are down lights.
It looks like those are shielded, is that right?
That's correct. There's a housing, it's a quarter round. These are solid bronze, nice pieces. They stick out literally, you can see on the cut sheet, 1.25 inches. So the overhang on the cap is 1 inch. So these things barely project beyond the plane of the cap. And the purpose is just to light down. It's a really cool effect.
Yeah.
And then I'm showing 2 of these path lights, which you see quite frequently in gardens. They're very small, about 18 inches high. And again, they illuminate the path below you. There's a shield or a hood on top of them. There's no uplight. So in the whole installation, we have 7 lights proposed.
Very good.
4 wall lights and 1 uplight on the tree.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Anybody else from the board?
Yeah. What is the hardship? I don't know where I missed that. I understand they're in a, you're putting this in a.
Sure. Let me explain. So we have from the center line of Beach Drive a 65-foot front yard setback, which is actually, the front yard setback is actually in the rear yard. So anything you want to build, beyond that is going to require a variance. So it's just kind of crazy that the front yard setback is located in the back of the property. And then of course, we've got a 100-foot coastal area management review line for Holly Pond, which is in the front yard. So we have overlapping zoning setbacks that are, creating an area that basically anything we want to build would require a variance. And for example, this trellis going on the back of the garage, which is not going to be seen by anybody unless they're on the lake, but still within the front yard, setback and requiring a variance. The spot itself won't be seen by anybody either because it's flush. The only thing that would be seen really are the plantings, the fence, and the 18-inch high privacy fence, and most of that would be from Holly Pond. In the off season, the houses across from the pond, I doubt that they could really make out much of any of it. It's quite a distance. And then again, from the road is lower than the side yard because of this retaining wall. The property is raised and the top of this wall is planted. This isn't really into the variance territory that you asked about, but the point is that the fence isn't blocking, it's really not blocking anybody's view of Holly Pond. The road and the pond are situated below the property. So that effectively cuts off your view of the pond itself. But yes, the hardship would be these overlapping setbacks. Very, very, anything that you want to build back there would basically, it's all a no build zone.
Thank you. It's great.
My pleasure.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Seeing no one, anybody from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? No? Okay. Woody, anything from you? No? Okay. We'll go ahead and close that application, and I believe that brings us to deliberations. So we will start those right now. So 7-Eleven was further continued, so we don't have to worry about that. So first application is the application of Robert F. Maslin. That's 19-2020. Anyone have any questions, comments, or issues? Dan? No? Vic? No? Okay. So I believe there's a hardship here because we found one before, and due to the unique nature of this property, I think he's also gone from non-conforming on parking to conforming on parking, which is a reduction of the non-conformity on the site. I'm inclined to make a motion to grant his variance requests, except for the 2.5 stories, Woody. I would deny that. I don't know how, if we approve in part and deny in part, but I would deny the 2.5 stories. As far as stipulations, I don't know. I don't know that I have any. They're not really doing anything to the outside of the property. We approved this site for a similar use. I mean, I think the only stipulation would maybe be no alcohol consumption outside of the property. We run into issues with, or we used to run into issues with the coal-fired pizza place abutting a residential neighborhood and having bands and music and drinking outside. So I don't know. Does anyone have a thought on that? Jeff?
Sorry, no, I have no additional thoughts on that. I don't disagree. The hours are, they're till 11 p.m. So I agree with you.
So maybe just a stipulation, Woody, that there's no, alcohol consumption outside. I think they've got to do outside seating for COVID. So, but I think that's under a governor's order.
Yeah.
But with those stipulations, I make a motion to, Woody, do you have anything to add?
Perhaps we can make it subject to specific P&Z approval. We have done that. It sounds like virtually the same items are on their agenda as well. And then there's the added question of the buffer. Landscape buffer is not very well planted at this point, but maybe the P&Z commission will pick that up.
Yeah, I think we could just give them some sort of advice from our board, just asking them to make sure that there's appropriate screening from the residential neighborhood that the buffer is maintained properly. And that, yes, it specifically does, I mean, Mr. Maslin suggested he was going to planning and zoning, so, subject to whatever restrictions they want to put on it as well.
Mike, if we're denying the 2.5 story, does that mean we're denying the office upstairs?
No, we're requiring that they go to planning and zoning and have them determine that the basement use is not a story.
Roger that. I'm good.
So with that, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
No, second it. I don't see anybody's hands flying up.
Jeff seconds it. All in favor? Okay, unanimous decision there, Woody. On to our next application. Oh, this is the inch and a half or whatever. This is calendar number 2020. Stephen K. Jones on behalf of Scott and Lynn Somerville, property address at 21 Miles Road. I think we granted a hardship. We granted a variance previously based on a hardship. I think it would be overly burdensome on the owner for us to require, some modified version of this building. So I'm going to find that there's a hardship due to the regular shape of the lot and the nature of the existing structure, and the fact that 3 surveys showed the property in 3 different manners has left this couple without a lot of recourse. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to approve unless someone has anything to offer. No? Okay. Do I have a second for my motion to approve? Barb seconds. All in favor? Jeff, are you in favor?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Unanimous decision on that. Thank you. The next application is 22-2020. Sean Walters on behalf of Wagner Pools, on behalf of Jeffrey Behringer, 36 Beach Drive. So I have no problem with the application. Does anyone else have any issues or questions or comments or concerns? Vic? Okay, and Dan, you're okay? Okay, so I'm gonna, Woody, anything other than stipulations?
Yeah, I guess that's just a question. The 6-foot fence is a little shaky. What does that mean for the future? But we did have some testimony. It's going to be screened, and I think he said some kind of open character to it.
Yeah.
Maybe we just want to make sure the fence is as depicted on the plans and screened with shrubbery.
And the same with the lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve this with the stipulation that the building conform to the plans as presented. The lighting to conform to the plans as presented, no additional lighting or off lighting in that area. I think the hardship on this, by the way, is the unique nature of the lot, its proximity to Holly Pond, and the limited front yard setback. I also, Woody, want a stipulation that there will be no on-street parking. All of their parking for this project will be on the site itself, not on the street, not half on the street, not a little bit on the street. It will be off-street on the site. I just don't want to go through this again. We had a lot of difficulty with a lot of applications on that street, and these guys need to learn to be better neighbors, but that's not our job. So we're gonna stipulate to that. He said he'd agree to that. They're gonna use no more than 2 vehicles on site. Anyone have anything else to add to that?
No.
Dan? No? Okay. Woody, do you have anything else to add that you want for stipulations?
No, just need a second.
No, wait, hang on. Planting plan to be approved by staff. He suggested that there was going to be some sort of poly screening the fence, and there was going to be some climbing hydrangea, and just make sure that that planting plan is followed through with, because and screening for the air conditioning.
Yeah. And Woody, what did you say about the 6-foot fence? I'm sorry. I mean, I know there's concern about it, but are we all good with this 6-foot fence? Where did you see there? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess it's just a little bit of concern for future applications. There is
Well,
some
we don't
view,
set precedent.
when you really think about this, there is some view across the street from their homes through this property to the pond.
I've thought about that, Woody,
You know
and
what I mean?
there's no view easement, so, you know, with respect, you're across the street, you know, I could plant a 12-foot tree and you wouldn't see it. You know, there's no view easement.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the comment.
Yeah. The fence, on the other hand, is a structural element versus plants.
True.
Which are not.
True.
But they're going to plant in front of it. So that's why I want the planting plan approved and followed through with. Can I get a second on that motion? We got Dan or Vic, take your pick, Woody. All in favor? Aye. It's a unanimous as well. Good work. All right, we are done with our deliberations. We're on to other business. Anyone that's still on the call can or whatever go-to meeting can stay on if they'd like. Again, this is not open to public comment. So Woody, you got a tough sell for me on this first one. Let me know what's going on at 16 Prospect.
Well, I'll just suggest that the clean way with something like this is to have a public hearing and let the obligations, commitments be stated. An unusual situation with a barn building that was approved to be rebuilt, with a certain limited storage use. It's evolved into a little more than that. And apparently the owner would like to proceed and do a little more. So it's just a clean thing to, at least my suggestion would be to schedule a public hearing and take it out. There is an affected neighbor because the driveway to a neighboring property goes right next to this barn. They apparently are okay with a more intensive use in the barn. But again, we've had some questions over recent months with proposed permits to change the building. So partly in the setback, and that's
I'm in your camp 100%. I think it needs to go to a public hearing unless someone on the board disagrees. I think that's what we should have them do, and let the public have their fair say, and we'll go from there.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on with Jeff Morrison?
They would like some time, certainly with the difficulties with the virus pricing and contracting and actually construction is a little scary for folks now. This is one of our complicated historic reviews, evaluations on Prospect. So they're just asking for a straight 6-month extension.
I have no issue with that. Yeah, go ahead and grant that. Do we need to make
a motion? Yeah, should do a motion on that.
Sorry, I make a motion to approve a 6-month extension. And Woody, I'd go so far to approve an additional 6 months if they require it. I think that we're in some pretty unprecedented times. So if they require an additional 6 months, you don't need to come back to the board. In my opinion, if anyone disagrees, please feel free.
How about just making it a 12-month extension or
I'm
not?
good with that.
Yeah,
I'm good with that. Make it 12. Yeah.
So I've made a motion for 12 months. Jeff has seconded, and all in favor? And you got a unanimous vote.
Okay.
I just think with all that's going on, who wants a bunch of workers in their house? Ugh.
Yeah, right.
All right, approval of minutes. I saw those minutes for July 15th. I looked at them, they look fine to me. Anyone have any comments or questions?
No.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, everyone's all in favor? Okay. So
May I ask a question here? May I ask a question real quick? When we're approving these minutes, why am I doing double duty? Why am I reading these minutes in my office, approving them via email, and then going through this again? Why? Why am I doing this twice?
Because we have to
let
have
me
a
explain.
vote.
Let me explain. There's two separate things we do. The summary minutes are what we're supposed to put out there and post on the website within a week or two of our meetings. That's what we ask you to email, approve. Then the detailed stuff is what we're talking about here tonight. That's a follow-up thing, and we're supposed to have a formal motion at a meeting. You don't have to respond to me on these detailed minutes if you prefer not to, or if you see something wrong, point it out. So there's two different things. There's a summary, which is just very brief, who made the motions and what. Then there's the detailed with, I talked about the fence over here and the buildable area there. So that's the,
I think both are the exact same, but let's move on, please.
Jeff, I get a third crack at this because I have to sign it.
yeah, he does. Jeff assigned it.
So approval of the September 16th minutes, which I've already done, okay?
Yeah, approval September 16th. Any questions, comments? Okay, Jeff, I've got a motion from you to approve. Okay, I'll go ahead and second. All in favor? Okay, those are approved. Report of committee researching possible policy regarding historic preservation considerations within the evaluation of variance requests. So here's my issue with this. We have no authority to grant variance based on historical nature of a property or preservation of a historical character. So I'm just curious. I don't know if I was drunk or sleeping, but when did we appoint a committee? And then
You
when
weren't
did we?
there.
Was I there?
No. Jeff
Okay.
was.
Okay, so Jeff, this is your deal. So you
Well, it's really my deal, but yeah, Jeff allowed it.
so you created a committee that has no authority to do what it wants to do.
Well, I'm proposing it should. I'm proposing that we should have a committee that weighs in on not only historic homes, but architecturally significant homes. So instead of waiting for someone to tear these homes down and then punishing them or going, oh my God, this was a home we should have paid attention to. The suggestion was that we form a subcommittee that addresses this and incentivizes these homeowners to do the right kind of work.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. It's unfortunately not our position to do that.
Can I jump in for a minute? Because I understood the purpose of the committee was not to talk about how to get a variance for a historical house, but how to define what is an historical house.
That's correct.
In other words, what makes up the definition of an historical house? We weren't talking about variances or including that as a variance, but it was something to consider, having us consider that when these things are before us. So that was my understanding of what the committee was all about.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and we created these eligibility considerations, which you probably saw that Marion Castell weighed in on and Chuck weighed in on, Vic as well. It was Vic, Chuck, Liz Geiger from ARB, and Marion. We were trying to create some kind of framework to say these properties are worth giving a second look to. You know, if we're going to give some exception, wouldn't we grant that for historical significance?
I mean, I'm all for it, but I'm not an opponent to it. I think the historical homes, I think we've done a very poor job in managing our historical homes in this town. And I have talked to Liz Geiger at ARB. I've talked to members of P&Z. I think there needs to be a commission. I don't think it's us. Like, I don't think we have any authority in that realm. I don't see how anything we decide is binding on a homeowner. I mean, planning and zoning can create historical districts. They can create, you know, historic zones. They can do all sorts of stuff, but we can't say, yeah, you've got a historical property, we're going to grant you a variance. We got away with it on the prospect application because we carved it out as an argument that it was in keeping with the nature of the street. And so we didn't grant it because it was a historical house. We granted it because it was in keeping with the character and nature of that street and town. I just don't know how we go the next step and say, you've got a cute little salt box that we don't want you to rip down, so we'll grant you a variance.
Well,
Why not? Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vic.
I thought the next step was to take whatever we come up with, go to P and Z and suggest some type of regulation that would, you know, would consider the historical nature of a house in terms of a zoning. But it wasn't meant to say, we're going to grant you a variance because you have an historical house. It wasn't meant that. Because we know we don't have the authority to do that.
Yeah, but I don't
Yeah,
think, I don't think you can, I mean, you can present to planning and zoning for sure, whatever you want as a citizen, but I don't think as a board, we can go to planning and zoning and say, hey guys, you need to be looking at this. Like, that's not our job.
Couldn't planning and zoning form a subcommittee that's a resource for homeowners?
Absolutely, 100%.
That doesn't fall under us, though? You're saying that would be directly under planning and zoning?
Yes. They could include us. They can include members of our commission. They can include members of ARB. But honestly, you know, it's going to be, I don't think it gets to where you want it to be, which is the ability to sort of save these houses through variances.
You know, I know that Chuck and Vic don't like that. Chuck especially was very concerned about us putting any kind of deed restrictions on properties. Sadly, that is where I'd like it to go. But if it just resulted in a subcommittee where we addressed these properties and gave them the respect that they deserve, I think that would start us down that road. You know, so fine. So it's a subcommittee that looks at these things and says, you know, hey, here are some resources our town offers, you know, Marion Castell with Historic Society, Liz, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't want to add work to our committee. I mean, we have enough to do. But don't you think, Mike, what would you recommend? If you think there's some credence to this, what's the proper channel? Go to Jeremy and say, we think this has relevance. Here's what we want.
No, I would, since I set this up, my suggestion would be to talk to Steve O'Vaney. And he's the chairman of P&Z, and I would speak with him and probably on some type of a conference call with Liz and Marianne Castell, the three of you ladies. And I mean, if Vic wants to join, I didn't mean to be non-inclusive there, but yeah, I would reach out to Steve and explain to him what we've done. I'm not all too sure Steve knew that we put this thing together.
Actually, he does. He does. Liz had a meeting with him the other night. I probably should have involved him from the get-go, but he does know about it now.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I don't know what his thoughts are, but I think between the subcommittee and Steve O'Vaney. So I would encourage having a phone call between whoever on your committee and Steve O'Vaney should occur and see what he wants to do. I agree with Mike and Chuck relative to with this and Vic. I mean, I think we're all on the same page here relative to the committee wasn't formed to say, okay, you're a historical house, you got a variance. No, that wasn't the purpose. And I think Barb, you've done a good job in getting to what the purpose is, as well as Vic, as well as Vic. And then explain that to Stephen and I don't know, see where you go from there.
All right, Dan, what do you think of this?
No, I agree. I agree with what Jeff said.
All right,
let me.
And I think it's a good idea. Again, I'm not gonna say, Barb, I don't like this and I'm not in favor. I'm just trying to structure it in terms of how can we be impactful. Like if we take it on and we put it on our committee, we go from a board that is granting additional rights to people to a board that's now taking rights away from people by saying, no, you can't tear down that house because it's historic.
Right.
So that's not our job. That's not, like, we're not allowed to do that under statute. So, you know, trying to find the way to do that, what I had suggested to Liz was, I think we got to become a subcommittee of planning and zoning. We can talk about what our scope is, what we, you know, how we look at approvals, how they can craft projects that are, you know, appealing to our board or other boards. But I don't think we can have a committee that's basically, you know, stamping historic homes saying, yep, you can do that. Like it's going to be an advisory board regardless.
Right.
Yep. But I think we should have that. I think it's ridiculous that Darien doesn't have something that looks at these properties. Really. Go ahead. That's perfect. I'll take it from here. I will go to O'Vaney and make the recommendation and circle back with the board then.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, let me just offer something that is from staff perspective. We get these inquiries every day or four from somebody who wants to change a property and they would need a variance. They're in the setback with their old house or their barn or whatever it is. And how do we offer them guidance on what's approvable, what's potentially a good quality character that we want to maintain, and a potential approvable variance? And we don't have much guidance to be able to offer to people. So that's what, at least from my perspective, would be good to have as sort of a policy that for special properties, and define special, of course, the board would have an alternative basis. I think that's the term Chuck used. Alternative basis for potentially granting variances that aren't strictly hardship. And the 2 Oak Crest property, I think, was a real good example of where they could build a garage that conformed with our rules, but it would be back over there and it would have a cropped off roof and it wouldn't fit the quality of the existing house. We granted some variances based almost entirely on the fact that they're going to keep this house and match its style. So how do we formulate something to help people do good quality things is what I think would be the most helpful. And maybe this is something for town council to also weigh in on and check out, maybe before we get this, nailed down with some final language.
Well, town council already opined on granting variances for historical properties, and they said you absolutely can't do it. I think what you were copied on the email. If you weren't, I can circulate it to the rest of the board. But it was pretty cut and dry. It wasn't like well maybe, or you could possibly, which is sort of what I've gotten on some other questions I've asked. But on this one, it was like a bright line test of no, that's not a basis for granting a variance. Just because it's an old house, historic house, doesn't create a hardship, doesn't give you the basis for granting a variance. So you've got to find something else. And so with Prospect, what we did is we shoehorned into the concept of, okay, Prospect is basically a historical neighborhood. This house got bastardized. Let's bring it back to keeping with the neighborhood. And that's sort of how we shoehorned that one in. I think we had another one on that same night that we denied. I can't remember the property address, but it was a salt box. But they weren't really keeping any of it. And
Hollow Tree Ridge Road, yeah, at the corner of Middlesex and Hollow Tree, yeah.
So, I don't know that there is guidance. I think the problem is we're a board that sees things on a case-by-case basis, a site-by-site basis, and the fact that we grant, a gas station dollar signs on their site and not on the next one, we're not bound by precedent. Every site's unique, every project's unique. So, I think the only guidance you can give applicants is, look, make a compelling argument, go in front of the board, and maybe they'll approve it. But there's not really going to be, I know it makes your life a lot easier, but I don't think we can give you a really good direction in something like that, because it is so subjective. Like, I think we got to a good place with porches, and we found places where we can say to people, hey, if you build this, you're going to be okay. But like with the historical house, it's going to be really, really tough to give anyone any guidance. So, having a committee under P&Z that can say, yeah, these are some of the things we would consider. This is some of the stuff we like, and grant it that way, or go to planning and zoning and get a zone change, and maybe you can build something different because it's a historic house. They can grant that.
Yeah, P&Z does have one mechanism, which is called the protected town landmark. If they find that a particular place or building is special for whatever, then they can grant effectively variances without them coming to the ZBA by designated a protected town landmark. Those are pretty rare and pretty exceptional. Far fewer of those than the things that are coming our way. And we do have another project that's on tap soon to reconstruct what I think is considered an historic building, and it's way out in the setback. We're going to have some careful look at that soon. So anyway.
I think that would be good information for planning and zoning, is that they do have a mechanism, and maybe they need to start looking at these, do a survey of the town what they could do is they could do a survey of the town of what the historic sites are and then start classifying sites as protected historic landmarks. The problem is they're probably going to get sued over spot zoning, but I don't know. Again, it's really a planning and zoning issue, not a CBA issue. I mean, if they need variances, we can sit on a committee that sort of evaluates if there's a basis for granting one. But, again, it's going to be up to the board that's sitting that night. What do you seen it? There's nights when we approve stuff that you never thought would get through, and there's nights when we don't approve anything that even seems easy. So I think it's a case by case basis. So any other thoughts? Anyone else want to?
It's okay.
And Barb, I'm happy to, I've been in the weeds on this. I'm happy to hop on a call with you and Steve and Liz and really go through this stuff. I know Liz has a vested interest in this, and I do as well. I'll be 100% honest. I'm not trying to stonewall, I'm not trying to stall or be obstructive. I really want to see something happen, but there's not really a mechanism for our board to be impactful.
I hear what you're saying. It's too specific. I have the oldest house in Darien on the market right now. And a good example is the way town offices worked with us to come up with options in advance to market that house. And everybody said this is a little bit new in terms of a process, but it was fantastic. We came up with roughly 8 options that the town would loosely approve. You'd have to apply for the official variance. But
Right.
I guess the result of that was that ARB and Marion and Jeremy and Woody were like, this was productive. This gives a homeowner options other than tearing this house down. So thank you. Thank you for hearing it. I love what you're saying. Love your support on it. And yeah, I'm flexible on how we get there. I just don't want to roll over on this.
No, I'm not. I'm not asking you to. Trust me, I'm 100% in favor of it. We got to do it the right way. It's sort of similar to the gas station application, right? Like if we don't do these things the right way, then it does become the Wild West, and there's never real reliability, and there's never consistency. So, I think it's a good idea, and I'm in support of it. So let's, Woody, you've got a bunch of other stuff on here. One of them that I totally missed and I feel horrible about was welcoming Kevin and Bill at the beginning of this. I had it in my notes to welcome both of them while they're on. And
Looks like they've left us now.
And I totally dropped the ball. So
We'll pick them up next time. Let me ask about the application form. We bounced that around a little bit. Chuck's last meeting with us, he suggested deleting a segment of it that talks about possible deed restrictions, but otherwise, I think it was acceptable. So that's the question. Are you ready to adopt that? I think we had it in your packet.
I didn't see that. I'd like to take another look at it. I kind of agree with Chuck. We're not in charge of enforcing private restrictions. That's the job of the neighbors. Those are civil matters, not matters before us. So, but I do want to, make sure that we're capturing things like that half pipe that was on the property tonight, and that surveyors aren't omitting stuff that is relevant to us. So I don't know how we encapsulate that into, the application materials, but I think that's an important part of it.
By the way, I think the reason the half pipe has gone away is because of their application here. It would have been identified on the survey and questioned why is it there. One of the things on the application form that we're looking to put in is the square footages. Have people tell us, how many square feet do you have now? How many are you proposing? That comes up quite a bit. And we never seem to get a straight answer on it. So this would put some obligation on applicants to clean that up.
I agree with that.
Would you send the proposed application to Mike, please, so he can review it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. And Woody, would you do me a favor? Two favors, please. Continue to have to send me a calendar invite for these meetings, and she might as well include the rest of the board. It makes my life much easier. I do one click, I'm in. And that would be great. I appreciate that.
All right. We got through a lot tonight, guys. Good work.
Yes, thank you.
Woody,
Yeah,
good job.
anything else on?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Aren't, on the 7-Eleven thing, aren't we being totally redundant on what P&Z is up to too?
No.
No.
Yeah, we're still in an open hearing session now. We shouldn't really discuss it now.
Okay, sorry. I was discussing a process, not the application.
What do you think, Mike?
I mean, the answer is no. I mean, we have a directive to review that for traffic safety. That's literally our job. And is it redundant to P&Z? Probably, but it's our job.
First time in 20 years I've seen this. Okay.
Well, Jeremy sent me two, and this is okay. So let's start over. Let's take a vote to talk about process related to location. Can we add that to the additional? What are we calling this? What do you?
Other business?
Yeah, you can add something to the other business agenda.
Well, I make a motion to add that to the other agenda. Is everyone in favor of that? Yes. Okay. So
What is it? Sorry, what is it that you're adding?
We're adding the discussion regarding the review of location applications as relates to gas station applications and not in particular to any current open application and how that relates to the process that P&Z covers.
So Mike made a motion, Barb second.
Sure. And
Everybody in favor?
yeah. So, Vic, my understanding is we are the arbiters of traffic safety, and there are two other applications where we opined on this for planning and zoning before it goes to planning and zoning. It doesn't mean that we are trumping planning and zoning or somehow usurping their authority, but the statute requires that we make a determination that the location is satisfactory. And the things that were in the packet that I received from council dealt with traffic safety, really. And that's why I've been pushing so hard for fire department review, police department review, a traffic study, because I think that, you know, those are the things in applications that are important for us to review. And that's about it as far as location. So there is a memo that was circulated from town council, and I can circulate that to you as relates to our location review role. I think you got it though, didn't you? Did everyone get that, Woody?
Yes. I think they were even included in packets, but it's supposed to be attorney-client privilege too. So it's not in the file document.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here? One quick second. Woody, that was the second favor I wanted to ask. When you send all these emails, can you please put the proper title or whatever subject in the subject line so the emails are easier to track? There's so many that, you know, I mean, if somebody sent me that monument sign tonight or yesterday or whenever, beats me. It was one of 50 emails I received on this. So you got to put it in the subject line, and therefore I can just type it in, search, and it'll pop up like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
What we can do.
Okay.
Okay. With that, I will make a motion to close. Second. Vic? Okay.
Yes, second.
Okay. Thanks, guys. A lot of good work tonight, and
Thank you.
79, we're logging off. Thank you. Thanks, Woody.
Thanks.